Hello, Jumplab, Argentina. My name is Clay, and we're going to be walking through some startup advice today. Thank you to you guys for coming and paying attention and showing up, and thank you to Carlos for putting this together. So we'll get started. I want to tell you about some of the mistakes I've made. I've certainly made plenty, and what I would have done differently knowing what I know now. I want to talk to you about some of the traits that an entrepreneur should have. Certainly, you want to be curious, ambitious, you want to be independent, have some persistence, and have some tenacity. Because like I said, I failed a lot, you're going to fail a lot, but the good news is failure is not fatal. It's actually really, really cheap nowadays. I want to talk about some of the skills, how to see, how to validate, and how to tell stories that resonate. So we'll jump right into it. A little bit about me really quick. I went to the University of Minnesota from 1994 to 1999. I was a business major in undergrad. Then I started at Accenture, which is the largest consulting firm in the world. Huge organization, 250,000 people. I was there for 10 years, from 1999 to 2009. In 2009, I sort of escaped corporate America, and I got my MBA from Seth Godin, someone who you guys are probably familiar with, but if you're not, you will be soon. After that, I started an innovation consultancy called Tribes Win, where I helped big brands understand marketing on the web, understand social media, social strategy, and that. And last year, I started building my technology startup, Spindos.com, which is an enterprise discovery platform. So it allows people in big companies, like I was at Accenture, to be able to meet other relevant colleagues and sort of document their knowledge. But basically, it's meant to create more collisions inside of big companies. I was at Accenture for 10 years, and I only met about 100 people in those 10 years. So Spindos is a platform that I hope will encourage and allow people at big companies to meet each other in a more easy, efficient manner. So that's me. I want to tell you about a story about my first failed startup. I didn't understand pricing, I didn't understand human psychology, and I definitely did not understand my customer. My first failed startup was in 1983. I saved up all of my allowance to buy an Atari 2600. And this was a colossal failure. It was actually a nonprofit. I wasn't even trying to make money. My plan was to charge my older brother and younger brother 25 cents per game, only until I made back the $46, the cost of the Atari 2600, which was all my money in the world at that time. They didn't want to pay the 25 cents. They just wanted to play for free. So that's what I mean about I didn't understand my customer, I didn't understand pricing, I didn't understand human psychology. So my first failed startup was way back in 1983, 1984, and I've learned a lot since then. So the first lesson I want to talk about relevant to you guys is, do you want to be a freelancer or do you want to be an entrepreneur? And my story was, I assumed there were two paths. I was working for a big company called Accenture, biggest consulting company in the world. And I thought either you worked for Accenture or you are an entrepreneur. I thought there were two choices, and I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. But what I found out, what Seth talks about a lot, is that I was wrong. There's one more further distinction that's actually very, very important. And that's, do you want to be a freelancer or do you want to be an entrepreneur? And it's not about one being better than the other. One is definitely not better than the other, but they're very different. And to succeed at either one, you need to do things differently and make a bunch of different choices. So let's dig a little deeper. A freelancer is someone who makes money when they work. This could be a photographer, a copywriter. Most consultants are freelancers. If you're working, you're making money. Anytime there's a dollars per hour rate, that means you're a freelancer, not an entrepreneur. And again, it's not meant to take anything away, it's just different. A freelancer provides you a lot of freedom. You typically are your own boss. If you're a copywriter, you are your own boss. If you're a photographer, freelance photographer, you are your own boss. Yes, you have clients and you have customers, but you are your own boss. Now, freelancing is very difficult to scale, and even though I knew this conceptually, I still had to figure it out the hard way. if you remember back to Tribes Win, I started doing freelance consulting, marketing for these big companies, thinking that would be good because I understood digital marketing, I understood social media, and these companies didn't. So it was a great way for me to charge them money to do consulting. But I thought I was an entrepreneur, but I was a freelancer because as soon as I tried to scale, as soon as I tried to make that business bigger, I realized that these companies wanted someone who could do the whole thing, do the strategy, do the tweeting, do the posting. And so I would need to hire people underneath me and bill them out to the client. And that's the same exact model that Accenture has. Accenture has big clients, and they have an army, a huge army of consultants that then send out to the client to help the client with their problems. So I knew that I didn't want to build that, but it took me a few years to realize that to scale that business, that's what I would need to do. An entrepreneur, on the other hand, takes money, usually other people's money, to build something bigger than themselves. So as an entrepreneur, you actually have less freedom than a freelancer because you have investors to answer to, and usually a board of directors, which you're probably on, but those are your boss. So when you take venture capital money, you basically are hiring yourself a boss. They are giving you money, and then you are supposed to return to them a huge multiple of the capital that they invested. There's an interesting note on angels versus venture capitalists here. Angel investors invest their own money. And so if an angel investor invests $10,000 in your business or $50,000 in your business, they're usually okay with, let's say, 100% return. If somebody invests $50,000 in your business as an angel, as their own money, and then a year from now you turn around and give them $100,000, they're usually thrilled. A venture capital firm, on the other hand, who might invest $1 million in your business, a year later, if you could offer that same deal to them, here's $2 million, they're actually not that interested because the $1 million is just a tiny portion of a huge amount of money, and they need you to be Facebook. They need you to be Airbnb. They need you to be Dropbox. And so they expect a bunch of their portfolio companies are going to fail. And so the winners, they don't want a 2x win, they want a 10x win or a 30x win or a 50x win. So just a little note on investment from angels and VCs there. So as an entrepreneur, it's easier to scale and build a big company. With agencies and consultancies, if you want to build a big company, you have to continue to hire more and more people. There's a number of people you need to serve each client. At Twitter and Facebook and Square and companies like that, they don't need to add 10 more people if they get 100 more users, because usually it's just space on the server, it's code, it's things that scale a lot better than services. So something to keep in mind, there's a huge difference between freelancers and entrepreneurs. There's a simple test, the yacht test. So if the founder leaves for a year on her yacht, does the business get stronger or does the business die? If the business gets stronger, then that person is an entrepreneur. If the business dies, that person is a freelancer. So even if you're a one-off consultant, if you're a copywriter, if you're a consultant, if you leave, your business dies. If you are Jack Dorsey at Square and you leave, Twitter's going to have more users a year from now than they do today. Lesson 2, 1,000 true fans. So this is a wonderful blog post written by a guy named Kevin Kelly. But before you want 1,000 true fans, you want 10. So what this means is most startups and even most big brands when it comes to marketing is they try to reach everybody. They buy a billboard in Times Square or they buy a Super Bowl ad on television trying to reach the most eyeballs possible. And that is about the biggest waste of money for most businesses. You don't want to try to reach everybody, especially when you're just starting out. You want to figure out who are what Seth says, first 10, and all this links to the blog post. Whenever you see blue, you can link to the blog post. So I'll click on that. So in 2 words, a new secret of marketing, 10 people who respect you, need to listen to you. Go back here. So I'll send you this link, and all these links are clickable. You want 10 people that believe in your business, 10 people that will cross the street, 10 people that tell all of their friends about you. And then once you have 10, your next step is to get 1,000. If you have 1,000 true fans, Don't worry about anyone else. This is a tiny percentage of the world, but you want 1,000 people who just cannot shut up about your product, who love you to death. Every great brand created in the last 20 years started with 1,000 true fans, whether it's Lululemon or Square or Twitter or anyone else. They had their first 1,000 people. So don't worry about marketing tactics that try to reach everybody. First get 10 people and then get 1,000 people. And then you have 1,000-person unpaid marketing team for you. So lesson 3, positioning. So what positioning means, it's a book written by Al Ries and Jack Trout. So I'm going to open the link here just to show you what the book looks like really quick. This is the book. It says The Marketing Classic. This is one of the best books, Positioning the Battle for Your Mind. So the whole book can be summarized. I'll do it in the next few slides. Buy the book if you want, but this is the main point. You want to draw 2 axes, an x-axis and a y-axis. And you want to label the axes with opposite adjectives that describe your product versus your competitors. So cheap versus expensive, fast versus slow, old versus new, whatever adjectives describe your product, label the axes with those, and then label the opposite axes with the opposite of those. So let's look at a couple examples. So if we plot some cereals, you could name the axes cereals clearly made by a huge company or cereals clearly made by a small company. And on the right-hand side, you could have cereals that are allegedly healthy, and on the left-hand side, cereals that we all know are unhealthy. So Captain Crunch and Honey Smacks are clearly made by huge companies, and they're clearly pretty sugary and pretty unhealthy. Now, Cheerios is healthier, but it's also made by a huge company. And then All Brand might be healthier than Cheerios, but it's also made by a huge company. Now, Kashi, or Bare Naked granola, are healthy cereals made by a smaller company, or they used to be. So Bare Naked started as a tiny, tiny company and then got bought by the huge companies. So that was a successful entrepreneur, started small, understood where they stood in the positioning graph, and then sold their company to a huge company. I don't know if it was Unilever or Procter & Gamble. So the founders of Bare Naked did really well. But what's interesting is the company that bought Bare Naked and Kashi, they didn't change the packaging. They didn't start to make it look like Honey Smacks in the box because they want the consumer to still think that it's created by a small company. So they don't put the Kellogg's logo smack across the Bare Naked bag when they sell the granola. Let's look at another example. So FedEx, if I say who are the 2 competitors to UPS in the United States, people always say FedEx and the Postal Service. But they're not really competitors most of the time, because if you need something there really, really fast and reliable, and money's no object if it's on a corporate account, you're going to use FedEx. If you had to have a signed contract for $1 million to Los Angeles tomorrow, but it had to be hard copy and mailed, you would use FedEx. Now UPS is a little cheaper, a little bit less expensive, but also a little bit less reliable than FedEx. And then the Postal Service, if you're going to mail a birthday card to your grandmother, it's way, way cheaper, but it's also less reliable. Generally, the Postal Service doesn't really lose many things, but they're less reliable than FedEx. If you need a contract signed in Los Angeles tomorrow, you're not going to send it regular mail with a stamp on it. So this is, these three companies are competitors, sort of, but in the consumer's mind, as soon as you decide how fast you need something to get there and how important it is that it's reliable, that it gets there fast, and how much money you have, then that it sort of makes your choice for you. So that's positioning. Lesson 4, how do you validate your business before you start building it? This is something I wish I knew years ago. So what this means is you take certain steps to figure out how can you prove the core issue of your business, how can you prove the core question before you start building it. You should not start with code, you should not start with features, you should not start by adding more bells and whistles to your product. You shouldn't even start by creating your product. You need to figure out, so the book on this is called The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, and you need to figure out what's the statement that if it's true, you have a business, and if it's not, you don't have a business. And you're going to need to ask this question over and over and continue to iterate, but we're going to walk through an example, and I'm going to show you how a venture-funded, huge, successful startup in New York City validated their entire business with $10. So Skillshare.com. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Skillshare. Click on the link here. Skillshare is a platform that allows you to learn real-world skills from incredible teachers. So these are people just like me and you. These are other entrepreneurs that know things. So rock poster design, how to make meatball soup, intro to web design. So these are just people just like us. So what's the statement that if it's true, Skillshare has a business, and if it's not, they don't? Well, the statement, so there's Skillshare, the statement in Skillshare's case is people will pay for classes taught by their peers. Now, if you think about that, if that statement is true, then Skillshare just has to figure out how to get people to their website and everything else. But if they weren't sure about that statement when they launched their business, so they had to validate that. How do we know that Clay will pay for a course taught by Carlos, or Carlos will pay for a course taught by Clay? How do they know that people will pay for classes taught by their peers? Because that's never happened before, right? Generally, you pay for classes from a college professor or something else, or online. So they needed to validate that. So they were able to do that using the lean startup methodologies really, really well. The three founders, the three people with the idea for Skillshare, they figured out what they could teach. They figured out 3 classes that they could teach. It could be cooking, it could be juggling, but they figured out, they said, I know this, you know this, Michael knows this. So they created 3 classes that they could teach, and then they spent $10 on a domain name and threw up a simple, easy WordPress site. They hooked it up to Eventbrite checkout, so they didn't even build the whole payment checkout system. They just used Eventbrite. And to figure out if people would pay for those classes. Well, then they promoted it, they tweeted out the links, they emailed some friends, and sure enough, the classes sold out. And they validated their first statement that people will pay for classes taught by their peers. So they validated their entire business for $10 long before they built the full Skillshare website and platform and checkout. But there was much less risk. So I would challenge you, always figure out what's the statement that if it's true, we have a business, and if it's not, we don't. And then the second question is, how do you validate that without building the actual product? So I wish I knew this back in 2008. So before Lean Startup was around or popular, I had a startup called Blogly. It was my first internet startup. Failed miserably. I didn't know anything about blog advertising networks. My co-founder didn't know anything about blog advertising networks. And we certainly didn't understand anything about how to validate our business. Knowing what I know now, if I would have looked back, we would have failed. We still probably would have failed, but we would have failed very, very cheaply and probably in about 2 weeks or a month. As it turns out, we didn't validate our business at all. We just hired developers to code it in Ruby on Rails. So we failed very, very expensively. Instead of taking 3 weeks, it took 3 months. Instead of taking no money, it took $20,000. Down the drain, worthless, total failure. But now I know Lean Startup, I know how to validate a business idea and how to get people paying money before you build the whole thing. So those are the lessons that I wanted to hit off. I know we don't have a ton of time, but I did want to link to a bunch of additional resources. There's tons of gold out there for free on the internet, so I'm going to do it in a few categories. First are books. First of all, read everything by Seth Godin. Read everything he's ever written. It's gold as far as marketing, and nowadays everything is marketing. So here are links to all his books. Carlos will have this presentation with all the links in it. Also read The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. This is a link to the website where you can read more about Eric, more about the concept, and then you can buy the book. So definitely check that out. Business Model Generation by Alexander Osterwalder is also great. It helps you think through the different business models for your business. And you can see a t-shirt company here. There's an iPad app. You can read the book. You can get the iPad app. There's a new business model canvas. So that's great. Online resources. So Seth's blog, just subscribe to his blog every morning, every day. Just drop your email right in here. He sends out just a great little nugget. Sometimes they're only a few words, sometimes they're a little bit longer, but generally small little nuggets of just brilliant startup marketing advice on life, etc. Ryan Alice has written a book called The Startup Guide, and he's got a website that actually helps you step through each part of the book. So the Startup Guide, right here, here's life, entrepreneurship, the world. There's these drop downs: how to be a startup CEO, how to solve problems that matter, how to create great products people love. Really, really great stuff. So the whole book is here online, or in April 2014, you can actually buy the hard copy. But you can read it right now for free online. So that's a great resource. And then, just for fun, read this article by Ev Williams, one of the founders of Twitter. It's called "All the Startup Advice You Read is Wrong." So this is a post on Medium, which is Ev Williams' new blogging platform. And it's a great post that just shows that why all the startup advice you read, including what I'm telling you right now, is wrong, but you should read some anyway. And the summary idea is that it's not necessarily wrong, but it might be wrong for you. So really great post. It's good to read startup advice, but it's not all applicable to you. So VC blogs, Fred Wilson's blog, especially check out the MBA Mondays series. It's like getting an MBA for free. Paul Graham, who's the founder of the Accelerator Y Combinator and a bunch of other businesses. These essays are just absolute gold, really, really simple, lots of great advice there. Mark Suster writes a blog called Both Sides of the Table. Amazing VC blog and lots of great advice. This is a little bit more for, both Fred and Mark are a little bit more geared towards technology startups and a little bit more geared towards startups that might eventually have angel or VC funding. And the last one is Brad Feld. He's a phenomenal VC and just a great person out of Boulder, Colorado. So check out feld.com as well. Free video resources. So Steve Blank, who's just an entrepreneur, a legend in the entrepreneurial space, has a free course on Udacity called How to Build a Startup. It's wonderful. It's free. Udacity is a wonderful platform. And this entire video course is free. Here's all the syllabus, and you can watch all these videos for free. So it's really, really wonderful. I should say Udacity. Eric Ries on Lean Startup. There's a bunch of YouTube. If you just punch Lean Startup into YouTube, you'll get lots of these videos. This is just one. This is Eric at Google giving his talk. But as you can see, there's lots of other Lean Startup. Watch these. It really helps you understand the Lean Startup methodology. Noah Kagan. Noah was an early employee at Facebook. He was an early employee at Mint.com. Really helped them rock their launch. And he's just a great guy. He does a lot of stuff online. He's got this talk he gave, How to Start a Business and Insult Engineers. Noah's one of the best I know at validating ideas for businesses before you build the thing. He really takes the Lean Startup and he makes it fun, and he just calls out people who build things before they validate and who worry about features more than they worry about customers. A couple other good links for videos that are a little bit different. So Kevin Rose has an interview series called Foundation. So you can see here's Ev Williams popping up again. There's lots of other entrepreneurs here. He's got lots of everyone from Jack Dorsey to Chris Sacca to Dennis Crowley from Foursquare, Leah from TaskRabbit. Lots of great entrepreneurs here. So these videos are all 30, 40, 50 minutes. So when you have some time, check those out. Another one is from a friend of mine named Jonathan Fields. He runs a site called the Good Life Project. Similar thing, really high quality video interviews with people like Josh Kaufman, Seth Godin has been on here, Mitch Joel, Lewis Howes, really, really great entrepreneurs, Chris Carr. And so the Good Life Project is a little bit less tech focused than Kevin Rose Foundation. So this is more just about entrepreneurs. It might be someone starting a a cafe or a non-technology business. But really, really great stuff. Audio. So Seth Godin's Startup School. This is one of the best links. It's Seth gave a $4,000 course. It cost $4,000 or so, maybe $3,500, to be there live for 2 days with Seth Godin in person for 2 days. But they recorded all the audio from the thing, and then they packaged it up and produced it and created all these audio lessons from Seth from the microphone during the event. So they're all free. Just come and check it out. You can see right here, this is freelancer or entrepreneur. He gets into that a little bit as well. That's where I learned freelancer entrepreneur from Seth. Lots of other stuff, raising money, advertising, competitors, etc. So download this. Each one is about 30 minutes, give or take, some 20, some 40. But there's 15, I believe. 15 episodes, about 30 minutes each. Absolute gold as far as startup advice. So check those out. Online tools. So the lean canvas, or if you go back to the business model canvas, the Alexander Osterwalder, the key thing here is don't build a 40-page business plan in PowerPoint. That is the old way of doing business. That is the old way to do things. Do not build a huge business plan. It's a waste of time. What you want to do is build something called a lean canvas. Here's an example of what the lean canvas looks like. So problem, existing alternatives, solution, key metrics, unique value proposition, high-level concept, what is your unfair advantage, what are your path to your customers, what are your channels, your customer segments, your early adopters, what are the costs, and what are the revenues. So it's really, really simple, and the idea is these things change, and if they're in a 40-page PowerPoint document and they change, it's a pain in the butt to go update that, and it's a pain in the butt for everyone to read. So you and your founders should have this lean canvas visible at all times on your, you can do it online. It's free to do online, or you can use the business model canvas, which is a similar version. There's quite a few of these out there now. But the idea is it's one page, and it allows you to tweak these things on the fly. So if you get a new type of customer, you can add that to the customers section. To the customers segments and early adopters. If you get a new type of revenue stream, you can add that to here. So do not build or update a 40-page PowerPoint deck. Just get a lean canvas going and update it on the fly. So, and last couple things, a list of lists. So there's a couple really great documents here. Steve Blank has startup tools and blogs list. So on his blog, there's tons of tools, advice, market research, stuff about China, just everything. Lists of tools from others, groups, find a co-founder, business model canvas, and customer development tools. So as you can see, just tons and tons of resources here. This is just gold. And if you see, the scroll bar is still way at the top. There's just unlimited websites. Now, don't get lost in here. You definitely don't want to use all of these. Usually this is, for instance, email marketing. You only want to use one of these. Like I use MailChimp, but people can, use these other services. Don't get lost in this, and don't think that because you use the right tools that you're going to have a successful business, but this is just a great sort of resource to browse through, to know about, etc. And then there's another document called the List of Startup Tools from a guy named Tom Holm. And this is actually a Google document that is maintained by a bunch of people. Oh, I guess the link is broken. But anyway, two great tools for online resources, a list of other lists of blogs and other tools. So that's it. I hope this was helpful. Thank you, Jumplab Argentina. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Hopefully this was helpful. Didn't have a lot of time to cover everything, but validate your business. Don't build code until you know you're building something customers want. Hope all's well. Thanks, everybody.